Chapter 2. I looked through all those files last night, Gillen told Crowley the following morning. The Commandant gave him a wan smile. All of them? Wish I could say the same. Paperwork is the bane of my life. It's the price of your exalted rank, Crowley, Gillen told him with a grin. That's why you're paid the big money. Crowley looked at the cheerful face beside him. You know, there are some people who might think it was a good career move to show sympathy for their commanding officer's problems, he said. Then he sighed. But very few of those people were trained by Holt. Gillen thought about that for a second or two. True, he said. They were strolling through the parkland to the south of Castle Araluen. Crowley often held discussions with his rangers in the open air. He claimed it was good security. Inside a castle, one never knew who might be listening on the other side of a wall or outside a door. Out here, nobody could come within earshot without being seen. Gillen suspected that equally important was Crowley's love of open space and fresh air. The Commandant was constantly heard to grumble about being cooped up indoors all day. So, did you discover anything important? Crowley asked after a brief pause. I might have, Gillen replied. There are 9 cases still outstanding. Of them, 7 are relatively small matters. A robbery here, a hold-up there. Sometimes the thieves stopped single travellers on the highway and robbed them. On other occasions, they raided small, isolated taverns or settlements. In all those cases, the amounts of money taken are relatively small. The largest was 15 gold royals. It's barely more than petty theft, and I just can't imagine Foldar setting his sights so low. 15 gold royals is a lot for a small tavern, Crowley interposed. Gillen nodded impatiently. I'm not saying it's insignificant for the victims, but for Foldar, it's really small stakes. I mean, he was helping Morgorath to overthrow the throne. For a man like that, 15 royals is hardly noticeable. What about the other 2 cases? Crowley asked. He thought Gillen's point was a good one. Foldar had never been a petty thief. There was little to suggest that he might have become one. He thought in much grander terms. One was a very large amount. A merchant was robbed and the thieves got away with a large amount of gold and silver coins. That's more promising, Crowley said, but Gillen made a negative gesture with his hand. The size of the crime is more in keeping with what we know of Foldar, but the method doesn't fit him. It was done at night, without the merchant or his family hearing anything. They didn't know they'd been robbed until the following morning. The thief even locked the doors behind him when he left. I see your point. If Foldar had broken in, chances were he would have killed them all in their sleep, just for the fun of it. My thoughts exactly, Gillen said. Which leaves one other case, Crowley prompted him. The younger ranger nodded. As you say, one other case. It was a raid on a well-guarded caravan of pay wagons in Highcliffe, Fife, carrying silver and gold to pay the garrisons in outlying castles. Highcliffe, incidentally, is currently without its ranger. He was injured in the war, and he's not ready to resume his duties. Which might make it an attractive base of operations for Foldar, Crowley said thoughtfully. That had occurred to me as well. The caravan was attacked by 15 to 20 men, all well armed and trained. Half the guards were killed. The others escaped into the trees. The drivers weren't so lucky. Now that has Foldar's stamp on it, Crowley said. That's what I thought. In addition to the organisation of the raid and the sheer brutality involved, there's a good chance that an informer in Castle Highcliffe gave out information about that pay train. It was supposed to be a secret. Exactly the sort of thing Folder would be involved in, Crowley said. So, what's your next move? I thought I'd travel to Highcliffe and see if I can think of some sort of trap for Folder and his inside informant. I need to nose around the place a little before I come up with any definite plan. Crowley nodded. It sounds like a good idea to me. Well done, Gillen. Then he frowned. I'm surprised that Holt didn't reach the same conclusion. He's usually pretty quick on the uptake. I thought the same thing. But remember, Holt was distracted, worrying about Will. And he tended to concentrate first on the cases closest to Araluen, which gave him plenty of opportunity to put his case to me and Duncan, Crowley said. If he was off in the west at Highcliffe, he wouldn't have been able to nag at me every second day to let him go. Whereas I have no reason not to head for Highcliffe Fife and leave you to your paperwork, Gillen said. Crowley's mouth turned down at the corners in an expression of distaste. Ah, yes, the paperwork. You wouldn't consider trading places. You stay and fill in the forms and requisitions. I'll go chasing after Folder. Gillen raised one eyebrow at him. You're right. I wouldn't consider it. I could order you to do it, I suppose, Crowley said wistfully. And Gillen thought he was only half joking. You could, and I'd probably insult the king in public and have myself banished, he replied. Crowley shook his head. I sometimes wonder if it was a good idea having Holt train apprentices. He seems to teach them no respect for authority. Oh, he teaches us to respect authority, Gillen said innocently. He just teaches us to ignore it when necessary. I'll get going this afternoon, he added, and Crowley nodded agreement. The sooner you leave, the sooner you'll be back, he said. It was the range away after all. No sense letting the grass grow under your feet if there was work to be done. There's that, and besides, I should get going before you decide to order me to stay.